Jobs. A machine that anybody could operate and find friendly, even the French.
Choose one.
I think mostly what we got in that hour and a half was inspiration. And basically just sort of a bolstering of our convictions that a more graphical way to do things would make this business computer more accessible.
After an hour looking at demos, they understood our technology and what it meant more than any Xerox executive understood it after years of showing it to them.
Basically, they were copier heads that just had no clue about a computer or what it could do. And so they just grabbed defeat from the greatest victory in the computer industry. Xerox could have owned the entire computer industry today. Could have been, a company 10 times its size. Could have been IBM. Could have been the IBM of the 90s. Could have been the Microsoft of the 90s.
For Steve Jobs, the road to Damascus passed through Palo Alto. He persuaded the Apple board to invest in technology copying what he'd seen at Xerox PARC, his instrument of change. They hired 100 engineers and started developing a new PC codenamed Lisa. But there were problems. The Lisa didn't work properly, and its price tag was heading toward $10,000, way too much for the average PC buyer. Jobs' domineering style drove everyone nuts, too, so the board ousted him from his own pet project.
I brooded for a few months. But it was not very long after that it really occurred to me that if we didn't do something here, the Apple II was running out of gas. And we needed to do something with this technology fast, or else Apple might cease to exist as the company that it was.
Jobs got his answer from Jeff Raskin, Apple employee number 31. Raskin's idea was a $600 computer, as easy to use as a toaster, codenamed Macintosh, after America's favorite Apple. Jobs liked the price, but not Raskin's design ideas. So Steve took over the Macintosh project, determined to make it a cheaper Lisa.
And so I formed a small team to do the Macintosh, and we were on a mission from God, to save Apple.
While Jobs pursued his Mac mission, he needed a more orthodox chief executive to run the company, a respectable face who could sell to corporate America. He chose Pepsi-Cola executive John Sculley. Sculley refused. Leave Pepsi for a 4-year-old company that had been set up in a garage? Are you serious? But it was hard saying no to Steve Jobs.
And then he looked up at me and just stared at me with this stare that only Steve Jobs has. And he said, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world? And I just gulped, because I knew I would wonder for the rest of my life, what I would have missed.
Yeah? Well, or usually...
For the young Mac team, average age 21, this was the start of the toughest but most exhilarating assignment of their lives, relentlessly driven by Jobs' ego.
Oh, look at these people. They're like family to me, really. And we were united by this common bond of trying to do this incredible thing with the Mac.
Jobs wanted the Mac to revolutionize the PC market, so he insisted that the team deliver perfection.
Steve was upset that the Mac took too long to boot up when you first turned it on. So he tried motivating Larry Kenyon by telling him, well, you know how many millions of people are going to buy this machine? There's going to be millions of people. And let's imagine that you can make it boot 5 seconds faster. Well, that's 5 seconds times a million every day. That's 50 lifetimes. If you can shave 5 seconds off that, you're saving 50 lives. And so, it was a nice way of thinking about it. And we did get it to go faster. And then this is one of the very first Macintosh wire wraps. This is wire wrap board number 4.
As the Mac progressed, new features were being continually added. Jobs said the Mac had to be insanely great and pushed his engineers to the limit. He had to, because by early 1983, Apple was in trouble. And this is what was giving Apple such a headache. IBM's first PC launched in August 1981. It was a runaway success. Within a couple of years, more than 2 million units had been shipped, overtaking Apple and making Big Blue the biggest player in the market.
When IBM personal computer owners look for good software, where can they turn?
to IBM.
What was driving IBM PC sales was software.
Business programs, entertainment, productivity, education.
But software for an IBM wouldn't run on the Mac. If the Macintosh was to succeed, Jobs needed killer applications. Enter 25-year-old software supremo, Bill Gates. At that time, his company, Microsoft, had 100 workers and was growing like crazy thanks to DOS, the operating system that drove the IBM PC. But DOS sure wasn't a GUI. Gates and his aggressive number two, Steve Ballmer, were immediately intrigued by the Mac.
Jobs talked to Bill at some industry conference and said, hey, we're doing, I think Lisa was sort of in development. He said, but I'm going to do the graphical interface machine here at Apple. Not just that Lisa thing, Bill. I'm going to do the one that's really going to be the winner.
While the Mac was being developed, Jobs staged an event, a parody of a TV game show, to whip up enthusiasm among software developers.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Macintosh software dating game.
Jobs got the three top software bosses of the time to sing the Mac's praises. One of them was Bill Gates. Steve didn't realize he was opening the door to the man who'd proved to be Apple's main rival.
When was your first date with Macintosh?
We've been working with the Mac for almost 2 years now, and we put some of our really good people on it, and
even before we finished our work on the IBM PC, Steve Jobs came and talked about what he wanted to do, that he thought he could do sort of a Lisa but cheaper. We said, boy, we'd love to help out. The Lisa had all its own applications, but of course they required a lot of memory, and we thought we could do better. And so Steve signed a deal with us to actually provide bundled applications for the first Mac. And so we were big believers in the Mac and what Steve was doing there.
Most people don't remember, but until the Mac, Microsoft was not in the applications business. It was dominated by Lotus. And Microsoft took a big gamble to write for the Mac.
And so we got started in early 1982 on our Macintosh software effort. And I think at that point in time, you know, it really clicked with Bill that, you know, graphic user interface was going to be the way of the future.
But while Bill was having his own GUI revelation, Jobs believed that Apple's true enemy was IBM.
Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? The entire information age? Was George Orwell right about 1984?
Despite Steve Jobs' showmanship, the IBM PC was hurting Apple's business.
And most pundits considered that Apple was going to be out of business. You know, in a few short months, Business Week ran an article on their cover saying, it's over, IBM has won.
The Mac team saw themselves as Apple's pirates, but the gang was now being called on to save the ship, as the Apple II was losing precious market share.
In the case of the Macintosh team, they were behind schedule in getting the Mac out, which is not unusual in high technology. And so just getting that product to market was extremely important.
After many delays, a date for the launch of the Mac was announced. The pressure of the deadline was mounting, but Steve was still a perfectionist.
No design issue was too small, and it was never too late to do it right.
Oh, it was a pressure cooker. We were working until we finished. We couldn't go to sleep or anything. I was up for 3 days before in that very last push. And finally, just the stars aligned, and the last release we made at 6 a.m. that morning.
It was now all or nothing because Lisa had turned out an expensive flop. The fate of the whole company seemed to rest on the launch of the Mac. John Sculley had even authorized a $15 million advertising campaign to coincide with the Mac's public unveiling, January 24th, 1984.
I remember how nervous Steve was before the introduction of the Macintosh. And the rehearsal the night before was a total disaster. Nothing seemed to go right. Steve was upset at everybody. We wondered how in the world we were ever going to get through the introduction the following day. But when that moment came, Steve was a master showman.
There have only been two milestone products in our industry: the Apple II in 1977 and the IBM PC in 1981. Today, 1 year after Lisa, we are introducing the third industry milestone product, Macintosh. Many of us have been working on Macintosh for over 2 years now, and it has turned out insanely great. You've just seen some pictures of Macintosh. Now I'd like to show you Macintosh in person.
The Macintosh was undoubtedly the first affordable personal computer with a genuine graphical user interface. It was also the first computer to be a monument to one man's ego. Forget the brilliant work done at Xerox PARC and the innovations borrowed from the Lisa. On the day, only one man was claiming paternity for the Mac.
So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
I was standing off stage, and as he came off, he said, "This is, the proudest, happiest moment of my life." And it was all over his face. It clearly was, because he had launched a revolution.
Ultimately, it comes down to taste. It comes down to trying to expose yourself to the best things that humans have done, and then try to bring those things in to what you're doing. I mean, Picasso had a saying, he said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." And we have, always been shameless about stealing great ideas. And I think part of what made the Macintosh great was that the people working on it were musicians and poets and artists and zoologists and historians who also happen to be the best computer scientists in the world.
With delusions of grandeur running rampant, Apple created a Hollywood-style TV commercial. It symbolized how the friendly Mac would free us from the Orwellian tyranny of clunky IBM PCs. Please.
With one will, one resolve, one cause.
Despite the hype, by late 1984, the Mac's sales were disastrous.
We shall prevail.
This is a highly sophisticated office computer.
In ad after ad, Apple desperately pointed out that the Mac was far easier to use than the IBM PC, but it sold for $2,500, $1,000 more than the IBM. And despite Jobs' best efforts in recruiting software makers like Bill Gates, applications were scarce.
It didn't do very much. We had Mac Paint and Mac Write were our only applications. And the market started to figure this out. By the end of the year, people said, well, maybe the IBM PC isn't as easy to use or is not as attractive as the Macintosh, but it actually does something which we want to be able to do: spreadsheets, word processing, and database. And so we started to see the sales of the Mac tail off towards the end of 1984, and that became a problem the following year.
Cringely's third law of personal computing was right again. To succeed, a PC must have an application which alone justifies buying the whole box. The IBM PC had Lotus 1-2-3. The Mac needed its killer application.